Um, Quite a few things to cover today. A little change from the last few days. So we've got three different arsons on there. One of them was a garbage can that was found on fire outside of an apartment. No real damage on that, no suspects. We did have two others that arrests were made. The first one happened about 10:30 last night. This was outside the Bishop Dudley house. There was a guy that had been asked to leave. Sounds like he had assaulted a couple other people inside there. They didn't want to do anything, so we don't have any reports or crimes associated with that. But when the officers got there, he kind of went off on a rant and was threatening to get a gun and kill several people, including the officers. The officers issued the trespass notice, which is a piece of paper. The guy pulled out a lighter, lit it on fire. This happened right out in front of the Bishop Dudley house. The officer ended up having to put that out. So ultimately, after everything was kind of sorted out, the suspect was arrested for disorderly conduct, threatening law enforcement, reckless burning, and making a terroristic threat. And there was no damage that was done except obviously the trespass form that was burned.
It was not that the officer had reported alcohol.
What's that?
It was the paper.
Yeah, the officer put in the report that it was pretty windy and it was right in front of the building, and he was concerned that the paper, since it was on fire, might blow somewhere else and damage something. So he quickly stepped on it to put it out.
Is that where that reckless burning comes in?
Right, yep.
Great, thank you.
Yep. His last name is Keene, Keene. First is Dyson, Dison. Middle is Len, Len. And he's 45 and a transient from Sioux Falls.
You said this was all around 10:30 last night?
Yeah, the call was right about 10:30 p.m. I don't see anything in here if he had been drinking or not. So I guess I don't know. There's nothing in the report about that, but the other arson, this was in the 900 block of South Colleen Lane, which is like 12th and Lyons, a little bit south of there. So this started off as basically a dispute between a landlord and a tenant. The landlord is our suspect. He was upset about something. I guess I'm not sure exactly what it was, but he was yelling at the tenant, banging on the door, banging on the window, to the point where she thought he was going to break into the house. At some point, he ended up starting a lawn chair on fire, and then the outside of the house as well. She was able to get that put out, called for a friend, and then ended up leaving, and then they called police. So when the officers were trying to talk to him, because he made some statement that he had been threatened, and they were trying to get information, he started yelling and screaming and cursing at them, to the point where, I don't know if I said it, but this was a little after 11 p.m. that some of the neighbors started turning on lights to see what was going on, because he was making such a ruckus. So he ended up getting arrested for disorderly conduct, disturbing the peace, reckless driving, and burglary, which was an attempt. And just sounds like there was some minor damage that was done from the fire, but nothing serious.
Did the lawn chair start the house on fire?
I think he did both of them. Yeah, I guess she didn't see, I don't think she saw him, but he had made the comment that he owned the place and he could do whatever he wanted to with it. So
He said the damage wasn't super significant.
yeah, there was no significant damage. Do you want his name? Okay, last is Waltz, W-A-L-Z. First is Jason, Jason. Middle is Michael, Michael. And he's 49 from Sioux Falls. He had been drinking. The officers noted that in their report.
What were his charges?
He had disorderly conduct, disturbing the peace, reckless burning, and burglary.
What was the burglary charge for?
Trying to break into the house, or she felt he was trying to break into the home. That was in the 900 block of South Colleen Lane, Colleen. The one assault is a simple assault domestic. The burglary, I don't have any reports on that one. I think that's probably related to the one we just discussed. It's got the same street name. The disorderly conducts, most of those were trespassings. There's a few people in traffic, panhandling, but nothing big from those. The family disputes had reports on all of those. Same thing with the frauds. Larcenies, a few shopliftings, a few unlocked cars, a few more catalytic converter reports. Two of them were passed. One was the last weekend, the one was about a week and a half ago, so those were late reports. But there was one that they found it, they believe it happened last night. Nothing big from the narcotics. The robberies, the first was an attempt. That was just before 5 a.m. We had a guy that was walking on Madison Street. There was a car that pulled up. The driver said to him, basically wanted to know if he had any valuables, and then the driver reached out of the car and tried to grab hold of the guy to get hold of his pocket or something that he thought was in his pocket. The victim just started walking away and the suspect drove away, so nothing was taken with that one. We've got some information to follow up on, but no arrests have been made. The other robbery, that was about 2:30 a.m. This was at the Get and Go near 16th and Marion. We had a guy that walked into the store with a tire iron and told the clerk that he wanted the money. She kind of yelled at him and refused to give him any money, and so he left. So nothing was taken on that one, no arrests. They do have surveillance there, so we'll be working on getting that. The simple assaults, nothing big from those. The vandalisms were mostly cars that were damaged, really nothing significant. The weapons violation, one of them was some gunshots that were heard. That was near 12th and Waltz Avenue, about 8:30 last night. Didn't find any evidence, no shell casings that were found. Didn't hear of anything of any damage. One of the other weapons violations involves a juvenile. And the last one, we had an arrest that was made. This was yesterday afternoon about 2:30, and it was outside the Ramada on West Russell. Had some detectives that were following up on a case, and they saw a couple people in a car that they were looking for. They called some patrol officers. When the patrol officers got there, there's a woman that was seated in the car, in the driver's seat, and the guy that was standing outside the car. As soon as the guy saw the police officers, he took off running, and so they started to chase him. He ran through the Ramada. As he was inside there, he pulled a gun out of his waistband and threw it. Continued. They were able to get him outside. There was a little bit of a scuffle, and eventually he was arrested. We're not sure where the gun came from. It hasn't been reported stolen, but he's a former drug offender, so he's not supposed to be in possession of it. So he was arrested for a parole violation. I guess there's a little bit more to it than this. So as the officers were taking him into custody, he ended up getting some cuts or scrapes on his hands, and they called for an ambulance. The ambulance took him from Russell, and as they got to the hospital, as soon as they stopped, he jumped out and took off running. He was still handcuffed at the time. The officers had been following, not immediately, but a short distance back, so they were able to find him nearby and again took him back into custody. So he was arrested for the parole violation, fleeing police, resisting arrest, obstruction, had a small amount of marijuana, so the marijuana and paraphernalia, escape, and then possession of a firearm by a former drug offender. So after the officers got hold of him, the detectives ended up talking to the woman, and turns out she had some warrants, and then they ended up finding some meth in her purse. So she had the drug charges and then some past warrants. And you want names on those? His last name is Walker, Walker. First is Justin, Justin. Middle is Andrew, Andrew. And he's 36 from Sioux Falls. And the woman, her last name is Harrison, Harrison. First is Cassie, Cassie. Middle is Lynn, Lynn. And she's 36, also from Sioux Falls.
You have the cross street of where that guy escaped from the ambulance and all?
Like where he was found?
Yeah.
Yeah, he was... He was caught near 18th Street and 7th Avenue.
And what was kind of the initial call that kind of?
Well, it was detectives that were doing follow-up on some case, and I don't know if they were suspected of committing a crime, but there was a chance that they may have been involved in some crime, and so that's what drew their attention to them. They saw them and then called for a patrol officer. Obviously they've got the marked vehicle and the uniform on.
And then that's when the guy started running.
Yep, and then as soon as the guy saw the police officers pull up, he took off running. And that's it. That's all I have, unless you guys have anything else.
What was you had something on panhandling?
Well, there was a few different, it was, I don't even think they were concentrated in one area, but it's been kind of an ongoing thing of the panhandlers that are asking for money. It's fine to ask for money, but when they're walking into traffic to accept that money, that's when they ended up breaking a law. So there was a couple of them, I think, were tickets, and then a couple of people were, or one of them was a ticket that was issued, and the other two were people that were arrested. But I don't think they were in one specific area. I think they're in the west side of town, but
That's just something to keep in mind. If you do that in traffic, that's where it becomes.
yeah, and at this point in time, there's been enough enforcement over the last year or so. That's really when we've seen the big uptick in this, and so the people that are doing this, they know. A lot of them have been arrested multiple times or given citations multiple times, so they know they're not supposed to be going into traffic. That's the point of it. It's fine to give people money, but you can't do it if somebody's standing along the road. They cannot walk into the street to accept, or they can't walk into the street to accept that money. So if you want to give somebody money, if you see somebody that has a sign and you want to give them some, you can pull over and park and then walk to where they're at and certainly hand them. I guess what I would suggest or encourage is if people do want to make some donations and help people out, there's a lot of different resources in Sioux Falls where you know that money is going to something legitimate. The problem with handing somebody the money on the street is you don't know if they're going to go buy alcohol or go buy drugs or what they're going to do with it. So just because they've got a sign that says that they need food or they need help, we do have a lot of resources, and I guess I would encourage people to donate money to those different resources so they can provide service to people that are in need.
Even though this is kind of a year-round issue, do you think that kind of plays a part of how it's getting a little blown out too?
It is a year-round issue, but it's certainly, we'll see more of that as it starts getting warmer. Anybody knows if they anybody knows if they drive around that they're going to see different concentrations, different pockets of places where people will frequently beg. Sometimes they're on a median in between driving lanes, which is another place that's not a walkway, it's not a place for pedestrians, so they could be arrested or cited if they're there. But there's a chance that the drivers could be cited as well, because if you're giving somebody money, you could be holding up traffic, you could be impeding traffic. So we just encourage people to do things the right way. It's fine if people want to help out others, but just make sure that you're doing it the right way.
What would be the charge if somebody was caught handing somebody money?
A driver?
Yeah.
It'd probably be like impeding traffic or something like that. And there'd be some unique situation. I wouldn't say it would happen every single time. The person accepting the money, if they're in traffic, they're going to be in trouble basically every time. But the big thing is, if officers are monitoring this, they can see the person that's standing there, and then they're going to go back to where they were before. The car or the vehicle, whatever it is, they're going to drive away. And so it's hard to find that person. But the people that are out there begging, they know what they're doing. They know what the rules are, where they should be, where they shouldn't be. Okay. Sounds good. Oh, you got one more.
Do you have any updates on the crash here in Marcy and Southeastern at all this morning? Do you have any updates on that?
I didn't hear about that. What time was that about?
Around about 8-ish.
Okay.
Or a little bit later. Or a little bit earlier. Yeah, a little bit earlier maybe.
There it is. Not that one. There's it. Yep. Well, the call was at 7:45, but I'm not sure what happened with that. I don't have any information at this point, so I'll have to wait for some reports to come in. I can keep an eye out for that. And is it this one? Maybe, oh, wait a minute, this one, there's a few duplicate calls, so. Looks like they may have started a report. I'm just trying to see here. Looks like the driver had some medical event, and I don't have an accident report yet on that, but the vehicle was going north on Southeastern, and then the driver lost consciousness, left the roadway. Looks like it hit a tree and then a fire hydrant and a sign, and then ended up stopping back on Southeastern. I think that's all I have for right now. Anything else? Okay, thanks.